Starship Vigilant, a Star Trek Adventures campaign.
Hello and welcome to the mighty session 50 of Starship Vigilant, a Star Trek Adventures campaign. So that's right, this is session 50, guys.
50.
Which is quite hard to believe.
Landmark.
I probably should have baked a cake or something, but then I would have ended up eating it all. So
I think
that wouldn't be a good
baked
thing.
enough as it is.
Yeah, maybe. Good point. Yeah. Today is the 24th of August 2022. So firstly, if I could just get you to just tell me who you are and who you are playing. So should we start with Mike this week?
Yeah, it's Mike, and I'm playing Lieutenant Commander Kaz, ship's helmsman, first officer.
Cool. Kevin?
I am Kevin, and I'm playing. I'm pretty sure his name. David Oscar Hagen. I'm the Vulcan science officer. I completely forgot who he was then.
Well, it has been like 3 months, so I'll let you off. and hello, Karen. And who are you playing tonight?
Yeah, I'm Karen. I am playing Chief Security Officer Kolish, the Klingon Exchange.
Splendid. So, as mentioned, yes, tonight is session 50, which I don't know what I was expecting for session 50. I wasn't expecting we'd have to wait 12 weeks between session 49 and session 50. That's for damn sure. But anyway, thanks very much for being here tonight. And again, hopefully signals are returned to track. But we'll see how things go. So tonight we are playing part 2 of Joy's Soul Lies in the Doing. So this is part of the Shackleton Expanse campaign, I guess you'd call it, from Modiphius. I will now. I'm sure you're probably going to need a slight reminder as to what happened last time. So it's only fair that I should do so. So last time, the USS Vigilant had completed refit at Narendra Station and had been engaged on a shakedown cruise. Along with that, you were also doing some scientific research based around the anomalies in the Shackleton Expanse, subsequent to your return from the alien dimension, which is in which you'd learned about the Tilikal, an ancient species whose spirit form or energy form, whatever you want to call it, appears to be trapped in this other dimension. And on your return, you've obviously the ship was put through the ringer, so the ship had been repaired. And on your shakedown cruise, you had discovered, or you detected a distress signal from I think it was the Barlin star system, and you'd responded to this, and you had discovered an alien vessel, which you learned subsequently was called the Starwood, and this was a ship from a species called the Akaru, who are a previously unknown and uncontacted species native to the Shackleton Expanse. And if you recalled, you'd rendered aid. The ship had a number of dead and wounded, and as a result, you'd offered to assist. And during the course of your repairs and your work on getting them back on track, you had discovered a commonality in some of the technology, or at least a similarity between some of the ship's kind of base functions, power conduits, which did resemble some of the Tilikal technology that you'd encountered on the planet in the Candidate 3 star system previously.
The energy conduits and stuff like that, wasn't it? The blue energy.
Correct. So the blue energy. If you remember, on the surface of the planet, Candidate 3, you'd when you'd been in the ruins of the Tilikal civilization, you'd seen these kind of power lines that were embedded into the buildings and the architecture. And in your repairs, you'd basically come across the fact that there was some similarity. And in discussion with Admiral Herbert and with Starfleet Command, it had been decided that you would accompany the Starwood back to their home planet, which is called C2, and you would carry out 2 missions overtly. To conduct a first contact mission with the Akaru, and also to gather information regarding this link to the Tilikal, who are a kind of a mystery that are still ongoing. So does that seem to cover what people remember?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
It was it was a long
does
time
now, anyway.
ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, I could do that. I should have done a scroll or something, shouldn't I? But
Yeah.
I've only had 12 weeks. You'd have thought I could have knocked something together.
Yeah.
Anyway,
You were doing
right.
anything.
So, yeah. So Captain's Log Supplemental. We answered a distress call from a ship operated by the Akaru, a species native to the Shackleton Expanse, one not yet formally encountered by the Federation. My crew and I have rendered assistance and helped them patch up their ship and crew, and now we are escorting them back to their home planet of Siku. I'm treating this like a first contact situation. I've reminded my crew to be on their first behaviour. So far, so good, as the Akaru seem to be an honest and friendly people. I'm curious to see what their homeworld looks like. We expect to arrive in a couple of days. So the ship is you're en route, and as I say, as the log suggests, it's going to take you. I seem to remember you decided it was going to be about 5 days because you're only able to travel. I think the Starwood can only manage, warp 3 or something. So as you are en route, so first question is there anything that springs to mind that you would like to be doing specifically during this time?
Yeah, sort of like really locking in the. Obviously, with all the work that's been done on the ship, sort of like smoothing all the glitches out. And I know we did a bit of testing and whatever it is. What do they call it? Shakedown cruise. But that would just.
So you're talking about for the Vigilant or for the Starwood?
Well, for the Vigilant.
Okay.
Just because, as I say, if we're going to have spare time and we're just cruising at low warp, and that can go on in the background.
Okay, that's perfectly reasonable. So sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, so we can get the ship up to, operating as smoothly as it was before we.
Okay. So, but the way that the work is being divided is that so the engineers have obviously effected repairs. So the Starwood is maintaining course now. There are a couple of the engineers have been posted onto the Starwood just to keep an eye on the repairs. But I mean, so far things seem to be progressing fine. As I say, you're cruising along. So Giara has, as I say, posted a couple of her kind of junior engineers onto the ship. Just keep an eye on things, and as you say, in the meantime, you can certainly be doing any continued work on, keeping things ticking over. So it's perceived to be a bit of a milk run at the moment. It's, as I say, the Vigilant is ticking along at low warp speed. You're not pushing any systems. So how about the rest of you guys? Anything else you'd like to be doing in the meantime?
Going through all the news logs and the chatter that's going on about if there's any news that's coming in on whatever systems we find out, things with regard to the Tilikal and any news coming from the systems we are going to. So there's like,
Okay.
so we're aware of, there's a trade dispute. We're looking at anything that's out of the ordinary or that kind of jumps out as being, that's a bit odd. Spice
Okay.
miners, kind of thing.
Yeah. So this area that you're traveling through is something that hasn't been heavily travelled by either Federation or Klingon, for that matter.
Is that
Ships?
Steve,
Again, yeah.
is that because we're staying out the area, or we just haven't got here yet?
No, because this species that you've encountered, the Akaru, obviously,
Yeah.
they are
What I'm
native
sa-
to this.
What I'm
Well,
saying
let me
is that
let me just let hang on, just let me
Yeah,
finish. So they are, you are obviously you are spreading out from Narendra, as we've seen over the last few episodes. Your kind of your influence is spreading, but you've still only touched upon a very small corner of that area, and so this is probably you're in a direction that again hasn't really been the focus of exploration.
we haven't got here yet. No, it's fair enough.
Yeah, it's not that there's anything mysterious about it or anything. It's just that you can't. Again, Narendra has limited resources, and even with the Klingons and everything else, this is just an area that's not been of any particular interest. Again, the Balin star system had been mapped. If you recall, you sort of knew a bit about. You had some records on it, but again, these people are only just kind of going out into space, and so you just hadn't encountered them yet. And so as you're cruising back in the direction of their home system, this is an area that you've not really has not really been travelled. So presumably, science department will be, as Kevin said, you'll be monitoring communications. You'll also be star mapping and just making sure your records are up to date where possible. The mission is to escort them home. So you're not going to divert to do any kind of detailed surveys or anything, but you're just as you're chugging along, you're recording everything, getting any more information you can. Now, one thing that has come to light, though, in response to what Kevin had said, is that as I mentioned towards the beginning, there does seem to have been an increase in reported anomalies, not just necessarily in this area. But again, the sort of chatter from mostly from Starfleet that you're getting through is that there have been other, increased incidents of the electromagnetic interference. This is obviously what caused the problem with this Akaru vessel. And again, that could be a sign of the Tilikal trying to break through from the other dimension. Given your interaction with them, that could be what.
Is it possible to plot all of those, effectively get a whiteboard with a star map and plot those incidents to see if there's an obvious pattern, a visual pattern before putting into a system looking for a pattern?
Yeah, no, it certainly is. And I mean, the short answer is there is. I'm not going to make you roll for it. There isn't an obvious pattern. Again, I mean, you have very high tech, whiteboard, stellar cartography, systems, and it seems that just the region as a whole, there seems to be an increase. It's not a big increase, but if you again, you've got a couple of days here where you're you're not engaged in doing anything other than, again, routine mapping, and so to be honest, computers do most of that. So you can be analysing. You can be in a room. You've got the briefing room, and you can be plotting. But the bottom line is, after a couple of days of going through this stuff, all you know for sure is that the instance of some of these things seems to be increasing. Slightly. But there's no obvious pattern, if you like, that says, this is the core of it. And obviously, in these regions, you don't know, because you're not getting reports from this area. You can only go by reports from Federation vessels, Klingon vessels or colonies that have encountered this kind of increased activity.
Have we gathered enough information to take any protective like precautious steps for the ship? Is there anything we can do to protect ourselves from?
So
We got
if you recall, Kaz had
haven't we got the computer program?
you've got an
navigation program?
algorithm. I'm going to use the word algorithm. I'm sure that's not the right word, but you've got an algorithm which you've between all of you, or between all of the departments on the ship. So input from the con and from navigation and from tactical and from science have come up with this kind of predictive algorithm which has shown you some success in avoiding the worst effects of these occurrences. In fact, actually, I listened back to some of the recording from last session, which I only just put up the other day. But I think Mike had maybe suggested giving this to the Akaru, but I think you decided that it was better that the Vigilant is kind of leading the way because you're not quite ready to give them maybe that information. But so what you've done is in game mechanic terms. Normally, when you're operating in the Shackleton Expanse, there is a kind of a negative modifier to any actions because of the electromagnetic interference, and your algorithm has essentially removed that penalty.
Yep, but there's nothing we can do to our shielding or anything like that to sort of.
Well, okay, that's a good question. Yes, why not? I don't see any reason why you couldn't. You can't try that. I'm happy to let you have a go at that.
Just in case we get caught in it or something, then it's
absolutely right.
Modulate the shielding frequencies.
Well, I think again, these are good projects because again, this little cruise you're on, for want of a better word, you've kind of got a bit of time on your hands because you've done, the ship is ticking over nicely again, and I fully accept that you might be doing some work to tweak things, but this is a good. These sort of special little projects are a good thing to do. So, okay, so what I would suggest is, I am going to. Now, I think you have got. I'm just going to have a look at your character sheet for a second. Just bear with me. Let's have a look. What have we got? So, Kalish. So, I'm going to suggest that you're probably going to be. You're going to be assisted by the ship's computer.
No.
You don't really have any applicable focuses, but this is actually going to be this is not going to be a difficult task because you have plenty of time in which to do it. So I'm just going to make this a difficulty 1 task, and as I understand it, you're going to gather information from your kind of previous encounters, and you're going to try and come up with a frequency modulation which will help protect the ship. Does that seem correct?
Yep, sounds good.
Cool. So if you just want to make I'm going to say, I mean, again, you can decide what do you think would be the best way to tackle it.
Well, it's probably going to be engineering, right?
Yeah, I could say engineering would work. I mean, I'm going to give you, that's fine. Go with engineering, and I would, I'd be willing to give you kind of, I guess you're probably going to have to go for like insight or control. I mean,
I was going to say reason and engineering seems the most logical.
Yeah, go for that. I'm going to give you I'm going to so what does that give you? A target of 9.
Yeah.
I'm going to boost that for you because there's no time pressure.
Okay.
So I'm going to make it. Say your target is a 10.
Okay.
You've only got to get 1 success.
Yep.
And this is what you would call like a success at cost thing. So you can. You're pretty much going to achieve it because you're not under any kind of immediate, constraint. You're taking your time to work it out.
Yep, and I'm sure I'll get assistance from other crew members and all sorts of stuff.
I'm going to get the ship to help you as well.
So maybe I'm supervising this.
Okay, in that case, why don't we do? Let's do it. Let's turn this around a bit. Then why don't we have engineering? Why don't we have Giara do this? But with you're going to support her.
Okay.
So because she's obviously responsible for the power systems and for the engineering systems. So if I go to her character sheet, and she has got, and she's also got the technical expertise talent, and what that means is anything that's assisted by the ship's computers or sensors. So the ship's computers are going to assist you on this. So that means that she gets to re-roll a d20 as well.
Okay, Brill. So
Um,
I think I would use sort of presence and command then if I'm sort of more of a supervisor.
That sounds absolutely fine. So I'm going to go with her, as you suggested. I'm going to go with reason and engineering for her.
Yep.
And now she doesn't have any specific focuses that would assist. So she doesn't have like deflector shields or anything, but that's fine. And then she's going to go for a task roll there, first of all. So what does she get? So there you go. So she's got 2 successes.
Brilliant.
And then also the ship is going. So I'm going to get you to make your assist roll. So if you want to do that, and as you say, yeah, presence and command is a good fit for me.
Brilliant. Mine would be 1 dice, wouldn't it?
Yep, just roll with 1 dice, but again, that just adds to her success.
Yep.
Perfect. 3 successes, and then the ship is also going to assist with. So we're using computers, and we are using. It's going to be computers and engineering. It's going to roll. It's going to roll 1 dice, and where did that go? Fat lot of use. You are vigilant. Anyway, doesn't matter. 3 successes is perfect. So you easily succeed. So basically, what happens is we have a montage scene of, Giara in engineering with Kalish. Kind of, you're both working on. You've got schematics up and everything. And what you've done is you've managed to come up with a reactive shield system. And what that means is that she's tied in with the ship's sensors. So what the computer will do is it will kind of read the situation, and it will adjust the shield harmonics on the fly to match the specific distortion. Because the problem is the shields operate on a, the shields go up. You have they're set to a particular harmonic frequency.
Yep.
And they kind of sit there around the ship protecting it. So what this system's going to do is it's going to get the sensors when you kind of are being affected by one of these anomalies. What's going to happen is the sensors are actually going to analyze the specifics of the energy field, and then they're going to adjust the sensor harmonics to match to give you the best possible protection. So what that will mean in terms of game for game mechanic just really means that if you're going to take it'll basically it's going to eliminate if you could take a breach, the first breach that you take from from any damage from the electromagnetic fields will be eliminated. So it just means that the ship reacts quickly to try and minimize damage. So whereas you might still take damage to the shields, but basically it just means that the kind of lingering effects will be, the first one of those at least will be nullified. So and obviously you've spent a couple of days, you spent most of your time kind of fiddling around with this. And so that's a good little bonus to have, and it will apply within the Shackleton Expanse in turn, and it is specifically designed to target that that effect.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So is there anything else, anybody sort of project work that anyone wants to do while this is going on before we move on?
Think of anything?
Not really. No, I can't think of anything.
Kolish will brush up on her Starfleet first contact sort of protocol because she's not there.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, excellent. It basically involves, all her favourite things like schmoozing and, all that stuff she's good at. But that's good. And in fact, yeah, that's really good because, again, it's good that she's sort of noted that she is she's kind of leaning into her responsibilities as more of a Starfleet officer. And that, obviously shows good growth on her part. That she can acknowledge that is something that she'll need to engage in.
So a batleth is not a tool for diplomacy.
Tool for diplomacy, exactly. So here's another question for Kerrin then. So for Kalish, how does you're working away. So you've been working, and you're probably in some downtime, and you get a hail on your communicator from Naismith hails you and says, "Oh, Sergeant, are you free to step into my ready room for a moment?"
Of course. And I'll make my way over.
Okay, so you go into the ready room, and again, if you remember, the ready room on the Vigilant is like a cupboard, basically.
Yeah.
It's not that
Show-
plush, but anyway,
Show
there's
me a
small
room on the
desk.
Vigilant that isn't.
Yeah. There's a small. It's a smallish room. But he's got a desk, and there's a little shelf in the corner with a few knickknacks, and and he sort of offers you a seat, and he actually bizarrely he actually offers you a drink as well, which is kind of it's not something you're accustomed to from Naismith, but he. Sergeant, can I offer you a drink? And he has a bottle of what you assume is some Earth beverage. It could be whiskey, could be, you're not quite sure. You're not an expert on human beverages, but he proffers you a glass anyway of an amber coloured liquid.
Okay, look, I'll accept it, but I probably won't drink any of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So he says, so Sergeant, I wanted to run something by you. How would you feel if we were to extend an invitation to Commander Mouty and some of her officers to call the Vigilant?
Sorry, to board the Vigilant, did you say?
To tour the Vigilant.
Tour the Vigilant.
Because obviously at the moment you're the two ships are kind of chugging along side by side. You've been over there, and he obviously is maybe a little bit nervous about asking you this question. But he's he says my thinking is Sergeant, that the foundation of a good first contact mission is at least a level of openness and trust between the two parties involved. Obviously, I would not be willing to compromise security concerns, and certainly the more sensitive areas of the ship would be off limits. But I was thinking of proposing an invitation for dinner for the commander and her senior officers, and perhaps to include a tour of the vessel at the same time. How would you feel about that?
I understand why you'd want to do that for diplomatic reasons. I guess I can't tell you not to. I would request, though, that I draw up the route and all the areas that will be off limits, and I would also like to put a limit on the number of people that come over. Let's say 3, no more than 3.
Okay, so Naismith considers this from me. Says that seems reasonable. If you
Um,
They
would
would also have to be escorted at all times. I wouldn't like them
Shackled.
to be on their own.
chained, shackled.
No, it's just Steve. It's just occurred to
Yeah.
me that his route for the tour is down one corridor, turn around, and come back again.
Come back, yeah, exactly.
It leads to an airlock.
So Naismith seems unsurprised, and I won't say amused, but he's kind of, this is kind of how he expected the conversation to go. He says that, Sergeant, that seems perfectly reasonable. If you'd be kind enough to draw up those protocols for me, and I will invite the commander and her 2 most senior officers to join us for dinner. Let's say tomorrow evening. So this is like midway through the trip. This is like day 3 or something.
Yeah.
So he says, I'll give you time to draw up your suggestions and protocols, and I'll obviously defer to your judgment in terms of escort and security protocols whilst they're on board. All I would ask is that we try and keep the security presence discreet. But I also understand. I also totally agree that it is totally appropriate until we know more about these people, at least. So, excellent. Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion? Oh, sorry, I just think.
You can make a suggestion. Yeah.
Have we still got crew over there? No ship.
Yeah, there are some engineers over there. Some of Giara's engineers, but they've basically just been billeted over there, and they're just keeping an eye on the repairs. Really.
Is the food edible?
Yeah. I mean, they're humanoid. They're carbon-based life forms. They're so what you've heard is okay. That's a good point. So what you've heard back from the crew is that they seem to be mostly vegetarian. So the food seems to be plant-based.
all I was going to say is maybe we could, if we could get a few samples, maybe replicate their own food.
That's a good. You could certainly do that, and you can perhaps suggest that to Naismith, and then what he'll do is when he puts the because obviously he hasn't invited them yet, but when he invites them, he will ask that they provide dietary requirements, basically. That seems fair. Cool.
Again,
all right, then. So
if we can replicate food, if we can replicate the things, replicate their food, and they find it acceptable, then it shows. We don't have to show them the replicators, but we say, well, we were able to do this.
You can certainly. That's perfectly acceptable. Yeah, I mean, you can you can either, you could maybe do a mixture of, human or Earth dishes or Federation dishes. You might want to skip the guck and the but I mean, you can certainly that's absolutely fun. It seems perfectly reasonable.
Fried Mars bars and fish and chips.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Replicated food, is it all vegetarian?
No.
No, because it's
it is. It is replicated. Well, no, it's not, is it? Because what it does is that's an interesting question, and I see your angle there. That's actually quite interesting.
The replicated steak, it hasn't come from a cow.
True, but it does match steak from a cow down to the molecular level. So, but I mean, I would agree that sort of technically it's vegetarian because it's not come from an animal, but in all other respects, it is literally replicating. It's in the title because it is literally it's an exact replica of that meal, but it's, as you say, but it hasn't come from a cow. So that's a good question.
I guess it's down to personal preference and philosophy, really, isn't it?
I suppose it's like replicating Klingon food, like live gack or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
If you're replicating that,
I don't think the Klingons do. I don't think the Klingons like to replicate it, though, do they? I seem to remember reading in some episode or something that they don't replicate it. They prefer it fresh, But
is that creating a life form then?
Yeah. So it's again a very excellent question because again it is technically because a guck is basically like worms, Klingon worms. So technically, if you replicate a plate of guck, then you are creating a. But is it a simulation or is it because it's not a life form. It's because it hasn't. It's not been born. It's not been. It's been created out of thin air. So.
As you say,
oh my God, these are heavy questions. You don't get this in bloody D&D, do you?
So
we're going to be talking about this for the next hour because that's a fascinating question.
There is a website, and somebody asked that question.
I bet there is, yeah.
They've essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but yes, the
vegetarian.
Yeah, because the process of doing the food, part of the ethos of vegetarian is nothing was killed in the process of making this.
Correct.
And
so actually, it's a good time. The 24th century then is a good time to be a vegetarian, right? Because you can enjoy a steak, but you can be your conscience can be clear because you can go, well, this did not come from an animal, so therefore it's not. I've not killed an animal to create this. So I would agree. I would say technically, yes, it is all vegetarian. It's a obviously the aesthetic of it is another matter because obviously if you serve up a plate of of steak and chips to a vegetarian that looks exactly like a plate of steak and chips and it smells like a plate of steak and chips and it has the texture of steak and it has the all of the blood, it has blood coming, literally all of that. But you say, but actually no, it's vegetarian because it's come from thin air. It's not come from an animal.
So I guess
that's happy days to be a vegetarian, right?
It is, but I still think a vegetarian wouldn't eat it because whilst yes, ethically, morally, it isn't. It still looks like it.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. I know a lot of vegetarians who try to replicate meat products. You think of some of the meat replacement products now, and they're trying to get them as close to meat as they possibly can.
Yeah, and that's right. Yeah, it is right.
Beetroot juices and stuff to replicate the blood coming out of a steak and all sorts.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I've had, and again, I know that the Impossible Burger and all that kind of thing is about trying to make a burger made
Yeah, I
from
mean,
plant material that looks and
They
tastes.
still call it a
and-
hamburger and a beef burger
Yeah.
and a sausage,
Yeah.
despite them being meat products. You know, you don't get like a beef flavored carrot. No, you don't get a carrot flavored beef burger. If that makes sense. You
No.
don't take the material from the cow, mush it up, and create a carrot out of it. That's where I'm going with that.
That's also interesting because then if you think about it, so okay, and again, I'm quite happy to explore this because it's actually relevant sort of to what we were talking about, but it's actually quite a good, it's actually quite an interesting point, isn't it? Because then if you look at, because obviously food has historically played quite an important role in Star Trek. I mean, Captain Sisko's, father runs like like a restaurant.
Yep.
And I always got the impression that they served, animal. They served actual produce, right?
Yep.
But I wonder whether that's, whether in the 24th century that's simply become it's like an affectation, right? Because you don't need to raise cattle to slaughter them to make beef burgers. You just go, replicator, give me a Big Mac, right? And as long as you've got that pattern on record, you can have an absolutely perfect tasting Big Mac or a, whatever burger you want. But as you say, it's not actually come from animal produce, so therefore you don't need to have, so does that mean cattle have become extinct because they're not being raised, for food? And is that why, the Earth's environment is better because you don't have greenhouse gases from, methane from cattle? Because we all know that one of the major problems with the, is the vast numbers of cattle which are required to feed the kind of, appetite for meat. But if you don't need cattle,
the livestock.
No, and if you have unlimited, because you have fusion energy, you've got antimatter, so you've got unlimited power, so you don't have a problem with, you don't have to burn fossil fuels to power replicators because you have this limitless source of power. So yeah, if you want to knock out 30 steaks, you just go replicator, give me 30 steaks.
Yeah.
How would you like that? Medium rare?
Yeah, because what the replicator is essentially doing is creating goo that is shaped and flavored like you wanted to see.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Something's just occurred to me. If you replicate 30 steaks,
this is Can I just say this is quality entertainment? By the way, this is it is really interesting.
Yeah.
No, I'm not even joking. It is actually really interesting.
If you replicate 30 steaks medium rare, I mean, you do that in the real world, they're never going to be the same. But if you replicate them, they're going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
True. But
unless you've programmed your replicators to have slight variation to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you could do that. You could just say, and obviously you could say, I want it medium rare, and the replicator will have a parameter for what does that mean in terms of texture and
also
consistency.
It would also probably alter the pattern to whoever's ordering it. If you have sort of like, I don't know, sort of like I'll go out there and say, right, okay, I have a steak night every Friday night.
Yeah.
And it knows I like it medium rare, but it might have, I like it a bit more salty next time, or I like a bit more of this. More
and you can change your preference, and you can say, well, I like that steak, but can I make it? I'm going to tweak the, as you say, I'm going to make it 2%
more marbling or a little less gristle or something like that, and then save that, save that pattern.
There's a good scene in The Fly when Jeff Goldblum is sending meat through the teleporter.
Yeah.
When he does it, he tastes it, he goes, it's meat, looks like meat, smells like meat. It just doesn't taste right. It doesn't taste like meat.
Yeah. Because there's another conversation, isn't there? Because if you were to take a plate of actual beef and send it through the transporter, is it still actual beef when you get it back? Because the discussion about, because what happens with the transporter is it, technically does it make a copy of you, or is it simply breaking down, so when it recreates you at the other end, are you the same person, and is that plate of meat still a plate of meat, or is it simply a copy?
I would say it is, because your base element was a real piece of
But that's like the thing about the transporter. It goes every time you use it, does it kill you?
Is it killing you slowly? You know, because it's taken a bit. Or does it kill you and then does it
Recreate
disintegrate you and then recon? Because the other thing I kind of assumed then about food in the sort of Star Trek universe as well is that it is definitely becomes more of a hobby and a kind of a leisure pursuit. So like you have people will cook because they like to cook.
Yes, yeah.
Not because they
purely
have
do it as a
to.
hobby.
So when you get to see Strange New Worlds, which is the new Star Trek show, you know, those episodes. I know you've seen. Have you seen all of those? Have you seen some of those, Kevin? You have, haven't you?
I've seen most of them. Yeah, I haven't seen them all.
Because of course, there's a big thing in there, isn't there, about Captain Pike? He has this like dinner, you know, where he's cooking.
Yes,
and that looks like he's actually cooking. So he's not like he doesn't seem to be replicating food. But then day to day, of course, if you're just you're doing your shift and you want to
the other thing,
it's interesting.
I say the other thing, of course, is it's we've only seen Starfleet, so you're going to have replicators and stuff on starships, but would each house in a city?
But again, you've seen Deep Space Nine. You know that quarks they have replicators, but then there's a whole thing, isn't there? There's a whole story about how they go off to find the better replicators because the ones on the officers level apparently are better than the ones in the they have.
I can imagine like having sort of earlier models or less superior models, and all of the food has like a slight, I don't know, like an irony taste to it, right? It's whatever you order, it's always got that little something that
But of course, in the original series, when they did food, it was always these it was that joke of it being those sort of coloured cubes. And so although they seem to have a replicator, in other words, they would go to a food slot and they would put a thing in and go, and it would come out with food. But the food all look. It goes back to what you were saying about how what probably changes over time is the aesthetic of it. So in other words, whereas you might get to eat food cubes that it can pull out of thin air, but it's basically making so it might taste like a roast dinner, but it doesn't look like a roast dinner. It looks like coloured cubes. But then by the time you get into the 24th century, then you've got a replicator that can replicate it in all aspects, i.e. aesthetically, taste, everything. So it's indistinguishable. But again, I quite like the fact, as you say, that there's always you can always just caught a little bit of a taste to it, and you go, it's not quite the same. That's why people make their own. Cook actual steaks, and all that kind of thing.
It's like the old trope about the food, food tablets. Roast dinner and a food tablet.
Yeah.
It's just
that's what astronauts. Yeah, I mean, space food is meant to simulate, but it doesn't look anything. It doesn't look like a roast dinner. It looks like a
But Steve, I imagine all the cooking that they do is with replicated ingredients.
Exactly. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, because I mean, again, the ships they have cargo bays, but they don't. So they don't carry. I mean, I never assumed they carried food stores.
But
you might carry luxuries. So there's always the thing about I mean, Dr. McCoy makes I've got a guy who brings me a crate of Romulan ale in over the border because you could replicate Romulan ale presumably, but he likes to have the real stuff.
Wouldn't that?
Yes. And I would imagine that the captains. We know that Picard has a. It's been referred to that he had like a stock of stuff, whether it be wine or something that is the real deal, because obviously he still grows wine,
Yes. Yeah.
So as you say, it's interesting, but you're right. But presumably the day-to-day meals are done, with replicated. If you want to make it, even if you're a hobby cook, right? So your hobby is you're a chef, right? But you're on the ship in the middle of, you're 3 years away from Earth. You go, well, if I'm going to make, clams with butter, you're not going to replicate them, aren't you? You're not going to have them in a fridge. You're going to have to replicate them.
But wouldn't there be? I mean, most ships, the Enterprise. He's got an arboretum, isn't it? So you could probably.
I get there's a bit of that.
I mean, there's nothing to say they couldn't have it be growing like a shelf full of carrots or a shelf full of cabbages or potatoes.
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting point. I think you're right. I think it would become more of a, as you say, more of a kind of a hobby thing. So people would cook for fun, and as you say, you might have a spot in the arboretum where you're growing a few potatoes because you like to have proper potatoes with muck on them. But also, if you're just making, you're just having your dinner, you just go, right, replicate it, make me, egg and chips. You're not going to you're not going to have a chicken in the cupboards to give you an egg. You're just going to replicate it. Very interesting, isn't it? Fascinating, actually.
It is.
It opens up a whole kind of area of thought about it. And But I to go back to your original point, yes, I think I would agree that even a steak, technically, if it comes from the replicator and nowhere else, then it's vegetarian, even though it might not look it.
Yeah.
So to get back on track, even though I'm not going to cut that out because that was fascinating. But So Naismith has then gets Kalish's input, and so the plan is set to invite them the next day, and you can then Kalish can go about and he will accept any kind of recommendations that you make, in terms of security.
Yeah.
As per Kaz's suggestion, they get Naismith sends a message to the engineers who are working on the other ship, and says, "Look, do a bit of digging around in terms of what popular dishes, and see if you can get samples, or at least take pictures. I don't know, because again, the replicators could probably make a decent job, but obviously without samples to analyze, they wouldn't be able to replicate them exactly." And there's another question actually. So, would you want to give that technology away? Would you want to reveal that technology? Because obviously, replicators would probably have been used to replicate the parts that you needed to do the repairs. But of course, you wouldn't necessarily have told them that. You would simply have provided spares and so on. So, what do you think about that? Is that something that you would do? So, would you make them aware of? Because I think did we decide last time that you didn't actually use the transporters, you used the shuttlecraft, right?
That question comes down to the protocol that we're working under. Is the protocol that yes we can, or no we can't, or play it by ear?
Okay.
So yeah,
my feeling would be General Order 1 doesn't apply. General Order 1 being the prime directive technically doesn't apply because they are warp capable. So once that a species has achieved the ability to travel at warp, then you don't have to hide. But I would guess there's probably the guidance would probably be only reveal what you need to reveal. You don't want to go straight in there and go, hey guys, we can transfer matter from one place to another and we can recreate anything out of thin air.
Yes.
Unless there's a good reason to do so.
Also, from a diplomatic point of view, you'd want to do an exchange of technology or idea, wouldn't you? You wouldn't just give stuff away necessarily.
No.
Yeah. And the other thing to bear in mind that we did touch on last time is to remember that it had Giara had had commented that their ship design is actually quite good considering the level of technology. So even though they are, it's basic, its warp drive is pretty basic, but the actual, they said that it was decided that the way that they put the technology together was actually quite advanced, even though their technology is not advanced, but their design aesthetic, if you like, is quite sophisticated.
Right.
Those are all good questions to think about. And the bottom line is what Naismith does is he invites the commander, and she brings her first officer and probably her chief engineer, I suppose. And the plan will be, so do you want to transfer them by shuttlecraft or do you want to beam them over? Because all these questions have come out. This is all your fault, Karen.
I'll tell you what we could do is we go to the thing and give them like a ceremonial thing with a shuttlecraft coming on, and at the end of the evening it says we've one more last thing to show you, and then beam them back.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah.
Because that make it.
Have our crew members been getting to and from the ship?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm happy to retrofit that. I kind of assume they probably stayed there, because obviously, if you remember, when you first went over, you went over via shuttlecraft, and I assume that those engineers, because if you remember, you took over, I think, medical and engineering people. I think you took the runabout actually, didn't you? It wasn't the shuttlecraft; you took the runabout. So obviously the runabout's able to carry quite a few crew members. So I kind of assumed that you'd use the runabout to transfer them over, and they'd stayed, and then maybe you'd done another run. But again, from my point of view, I mean, it's really your call on the transport, because again, it's advanced technology, but you haven't seen any evidence that they have such a device.
No, I don't think there's harm in them necessarily knowing that we have it, unless we really want to be super cautious and not show our full hand, because they wouldn't be able to steal the technology from us just by knowing we have it.
No, exactly.
So it's either are we showing our superiority or are we keeping,
That's another good question, isn't it? Because again, another element of diplomacy is you don't want to come across as being, "Hey, peasants, we've got all this cool stuff. What are you going to do for us?" It's as you rightly said, Karen. It's a range of ideas and all that kind of thing.
There is cultural.
Yeah, cool.
On
hey, this is all good stuff, isn't
it? You know what I mean? It's sort of like if we run them through the transporter, they go, "Oh my God, you just killed us." You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like those tribes in the Amazon, aren't there, that they don't want you taking their picture because they think you're stealing their soul.
Yeah.
So. But there's nothing to say that we can't. Like our engineers over there, they might need parts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We wouldn't keep shuttling that back and forward. I'm sure we'd transport it across.
Well, okay. So what? So I mean, in that case, what I'm hearing is I think then probably where we are is that you're not going to necessarily hide the transporter from them.
Yep.
But you're also not going to make a big deal out of it. So in other words,
Yes.
I think you're right that for them coming over for dinner, it probably would be appropriate diplomatically. And I'm going to say that Naismith sends the runabout to collect them.
Yep.
And so they can then be brought on board. And then when they come on board, you have like Kalish can have a couple of her guards kind of have an honor guard. And also they can also, then that also, means that they fall into place behind them and then can also discreetly escort them as well.
Yes.
And obviously then, you guys would be in your sort of dress uniforms, presumably, and the mess hall is big enough to accommodate a big table with all the kind of senior officers, and then I guess we'll assume that what's happened is that your engineers on board have maybe transported back over some samples. So basically, what you do is get the replicator to produce kind of a version of some of the Akaru dishes, as well as perhaps a selection of maybe Earth and other races vegetarian, because given that that they are vegetarian, so at least they look like vegetarian. So to avoid the problem of, oh no, this is actually replicated, so it's not actually a lamb chop. You actually provide them with food that looks like it's vegetarian food.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right, so we don't need to go through all of that. We've talked about that in quite a bit of detail, and again, that was thoroughly interesting. But that dinner goes perfectly well. All of your impression of these the Akaru is, as you had your impression before, is they all seem to be very curious. They're very open, so they're very and if you ask them questions, they are happy to to answer the questions to the best of their ability. And they are quite, they're quite sociable. They're quite happy talking. They sort of talk to everybody, around them in the meal. And they also ask questions, and they ask a lot of questions. And some of that is, about technology, but in general terms, they're not asking you for the plans of the runabout or whatever, but they're kind of interested in, and also some history and that goes for all of your different cultural backgrounds, and they seem to be keen to learn, as much as they can.
Try and stick in a few references to the few oblique references to the Tilikali. Actually, asked them about them.
You can do if you want. Yeah,
we asked them about them.
Yeah, you can do.
But they know anything about them? Have they heard about them in there? They turned up in their myths or history or.
Okay. So the short answer is no. If you use the word Tilikal, they don't. That word doesn't seem to register with them at all.
Okay. Means now.
All it means is that they don't recognise that name for what you're talking about. I mean, obviously they have myth, and they have, they have myths of gods, and the same as most cultures do. But whether any of those are the Tilikal, again, based upon a conversation, in a few minutes.
Yeah.
That's
something you'd have to have a deep study with, like a
their
A
cultural
professional on the subject, wouldn't you?
Quite right. And so, yeah, I mean, you can say to them, "Can I ask, have you heard of a race called the Tilicar?" And they go, "Nope."
Mm.
Simple as that, really. They don't that again. And you don't get any impression that they're lying. They just it might be that they know of them under a different name, but obviously that word that you've been told by that's how they refer to themselves, the Tilicar. But that doesn't seem to resonate with them at all. Cool.
Steve,
Yeah.
just wondering, mate. In true Star Trek fashion, what sort of flavour is this race? Are they sort of cultural or scientific or warfaring? What's
Okay. That's an excellent question. Let's have a little look and see.
So say
Okay, so they seem to be quite. They seem to be quite cultural.
Yep.
They don't seem to be militaristic. Your investigations of their ship, the work, and obviously all of you were on the ship for a brief period at least. And although the ship had some weaponry, but very basic kind of particle cannons, which equivalent to the sort of weaponry that the NX-01 would have had. In fact, actually, probably not quite as advanced. They don't seem to have any kind of like photonic torpedo or photon torpedo equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
They simply have directed energy weapons, particle beams, which seem, I mean, certainly they wouldn't trouble the Vigilant at all. And again, they seem to be there for self-defense rather than for conquest, if that makes sense. Their Starfleet or their Space Navy equivalent seems to be much more centered around a kind of merchant navy type of model.
Okay.
So although there is a military, there is a military organization to it. So you have a commander and you have officers, but they don't seem to wear. They certainly don't seem to wear uniforms, or at least not in the same way that you do in Starfleet.
More like a merchant navy rather than a.
Yeah, Starfleet uniform. They're certainly much more. Their navy seems much more relaxed. Put it that way. They have. So you notice that the commander has some insignia, which presumably denote her rank. But in terms of clothing, they sort of wear functional. So kind of I say jumpsuits, but functional clothing.
Yes.
But there doesn't seem to be any strict military code. Certainly, the way that they carry themselves is not militaristic. They seem very curious. So, as a people, and all of them that you've encountered amongst the crew seem very open and very curious. And obviously, these guys are the kind of pioneers of their species because they're out exploring.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense. But you certainly don't get the impression of them being either militaristically inclined or particularly militaristically capable, if that makes sense.
Okay, sure. And their questioning, does it seem to be more on our cultures or more on our tech or more?
Seems more cultural.
More cultural, yeah.
The tech is of interest because again, and certainly the engineer equivalent is ask some general questions about when Giara is kind of cagily telling, she sort of gives them a vague impression of how it works. And obviously the technology is fundamentally the same because generally all warp drive technology is essentially it's the same.
Yep.
And all you do is you refine it and you improve it.
Yep.
And so he asked questions about how have you solved the problem of inertial dampening at high warp speeds and this kind of thing. Which seems reasonable. But they certainly don't. He certainly doesn't ask about weaponry or about tactical systems. And I presume Kalish is probably would hear that if he was asking. And he makes note. And again, the commander is more interested about hearing about where you come from. So even with Kalish, as conversation moves around, she's not really. This commander's not really. Doesn't know anything about Klingons as a martial people. She's just like, well, tell me about, what's your home world like? And if that makes sense. So they just seem genuinely, curious, but not, they're not probing for sort of tactical information.
Yes. Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think Kalish would have picked up on that relatively soon. So I don't think she's particularly suspicious of them.
No, 100%. And again, I'll tell you, again, all of her instincts, put her at some level of ease that they don't seem to be a threat.
Yeah.
So does anyone else have anything that you particularly want to ask them? Because again, this dinner is just it's a vague. It's just a vague scene where you're just getting to meet these people and find out a bit more about them. But is there anything in particular anyone would like to ask them? Specifically, or is it you happy just to go with general impressions?
You kind of want to know what they know of the Tilical without
I've already asked
asking them what they know.
That's what I was
We
going
have-
to earlier.
Well, I mean, Kaz has mentioned has essentially said, so have you heard of the Tilical? And the reaction is they don't know that word or that name, and if you try and describe to them the specifics based upon what you've encountered, then as Karen said, it'd be hard to get an idea. It might be that there might be something in their mythology or their legends that would relate to that, but you certainly don't get the impression that they know anything about them, and certainly they don't know that name, so they've never heard them referred to as that. And if you describe the sort of technology and everything, and that's interesting because again, given that you know that there is some element or some commonality with their technology with the Tilical, but you don't without doing a more in-depth study, you wouldn't be able to find out any more than that really. Just from conversation, they don't seem to know anything about them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So Steve, Kolish has got two bits of information she's interested in.
Okay.
One of which is about other races that they've come across and if they're in contact with any other races. And then she's also interested in their war history, civil war on the planet. Like,
okay,
have they had world wars? And she's just interested in them as a race from that point of view.
Okay, so I'm going to spitball a little bit here. I'm going to, if you just give me 1 second, actually, what I'll do, because there is what I should probably do is actually look at the entry for the race that we're talking about, just so that I can give you the actual information without just bullshitting. I could make something up, but I know that
I'm happy with bullshit.
no, I know that there is actually an entry. Here we go. Factions within the. Here we go. The Akaru. Is that them? The Akaru. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. So let's have a little look. Okay. Okay. All right. Fine. So right. Sorry. Just remind me. So what? Just you wanted to know about?
So interested in which other race or any other races that they have been in contact with or are in contact with.
Right. Okay. So the short answer to that is no. This vessel is the first explorer vessel that has left the Akaru home system.
So are we the first life in the universe that they've come across?
Correct.
Okay, interesting.
They have, however. So what they imply is that they have had evidence of other civilizations based upon observation.
Yeah.
So, for example, the equivalent of the SETI program on Earth. In terms of that, they have detected what they believe to be indications of life. So they might have picked up signals or whatever, but they've never actually encountered any other off-world species.
So
and
I'm
in fact,
picturing,
this vessel is
Omicron Persei 8, where they watch all the sitcoms from Earth, from Futurama.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, it could be. No, it could be exactly. And they kind of were not surprised. They're not surprised to encounter other species because, again, they firmly believe that there were other species out there.
Okay.
And but again, in terms of tangible off-world contact, then you guys are the first.
Yep.
So
And
the other thing you asked about was their
thing, Steve,
militaristic history.
Yeah, sort of major conflicts. Like, obviously, we've had 4 world wars, so I sort of it's only 4, right?
Yeah.
Or is it 3? How many world wars have I had?
I think technically it's 3 big ones and 1 little one, but
Okay.
so we'll go with 4.
And also, what's the state of their political system at the minute? Are they globally united? Are there different superpowers and stuff like that?
Okay, so the the world is so their political structure is so they are ruled by, they're governed, I should say, by somebody who is called the Eax. That's a hard word to pronounce. Eax Nedeon. That's an interesting. So there is essentially, they are, as I said, they're quite culturally they are fairly non-militaristic. They've only recently had any sort of global sort of military organization, and that's only come about as a result of their expansion to push off the planet.
Okay.
So in other words, they've kind of organized they've all had to they've cooperated, and so they've created an organization to implement that. But up until recently, they've not had any sort of need for that. Their world has had, because it's basically united under this one kind of belief system, which is centered around this Eax or Iax. They've never really had any sort of internal conflict, certainly nothing significant. So they say there have been the odd like regional, set to, if you like. So in history, to do with land grab, that kind of thing, as you'd expect.
Yeah.
But in terms of global, they certainly have had no world wars.
Okay.
And they've certainly have had, again, they've only recently had the ability to, as I say, have a global military organization, simply to facilitate off-world exploration.
Okay, bro.
And again, it backs up the fact that they all seem to be pretty much on the same page. And again, they have this kind of a single religion, basically. I mean, this guy, this Eax thing is a belief system rather than maybe a religion specifically.
Okay.
And they have a wide range of arts and performance art and written art and all that kind of thing. But yeah, pretty much as you've already gathered, culturally a fairly peaceful people, as far as you can tell.
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Right. Anyone else got anything?
Can't think of anything.
I think we covered it.
Yeah, I'm just skimming through the notes here, just in case there's anything else relevant to what you've asked about. Okay, so right, so you've this dinner proceeds. Everything's going quite well. Again, they're, as I say, they're open and quite willing to discuss all of this. None of it seems to be off limits. If you ask them about and again, they're not really going to be able to cover the details of their belief system and all of that in a couple of hours. But you certainly, all of you get good good vibes. You don't really get any kind of warning signs that make you suspicious.
Yes, yeah. Don't seem to be hiding anything or
a key thing to take away. Right. So as you are having your so you're having dessert basically, and the dinner's gone down very well. Certainly, Commander Mouty and her people are very very grateful that you've gone to the trouble of providing some semblance of native dishes for them.
did we get it right, or did they laugh?
Yeah, I think so. No, not really. I mean, again, they're probably too polite. It might taste like crap, but they don't. They won't admit it.
We didn't put ice cream on carrots or anything like that.
No. Well, don't rule that out. But they've they certainly are, again, very grateful that you've gone to the trouble, and they thank Commander Naismith for the hospitality and all of the rest of it. All of a sudden, however, you as you're sitting at your you're sitting at the table, and all of a sudden the deck seems to kind of fly out from under you, and you all basically the ship seems to tilt as if it's been hit by something, and simultaneously the red alert klaxon goes off throughout the ship, and all of your kind of comm badges, captains to the bridge, urgent. And similarly, the communications device from the Mouty, from Commander Mouty's sort of communicator equivalent starts beeping. So you all rush to the bridge, I'm assuming. As I say, the mess hall is left in a bit of a state of
Like reflexes, I get
disarray.
there first, straight over the table.
I beg your pardon?
The cat-like,
Say that again?
cat-like reflexes, so I get there first. I go straight over the kitchen. Straight over the...
Yeah, no problem.
Steve, I'll run to the deck, but I'll make sure that their escort is staying with them.
Perfect. So you sort of appear. You all come to the bridge, and obviously the alert klaxons are still going on, and Naismith sort of strides in, and he kind of undoes his tunics, like, because you're wearing the sort of high-necked dress uniforms, those sort of long, like long dinner coats. So he kind of undoes his collar because it's quite restrictive, and he's like, "Report." The officer on the officer on duty kind of reports that you've been hit by a sudden tetrion burst, which came out of nowhere. It seems to be some sort of natural, it's a natural phenomenon. And your predictive shielding that you put in place actually worked very efficiently. So although you took some shock, the ship took some shock damage, the shields managed to block the worst of the effect. You're getting damage reports coming in, or rather the officer is coordinating damage reports, but damage is superficial. And there is a slight smell of ozone in the air where it looks like one of the engineering console might have shorted out or something, but it's all superficial. Dr. Plume reports that there are Dr. Plume has collated reports from sick bay, and there's no casualties apart from there's a couple of like sprained ankles just where people have been thrown off balance.
Yep. Yeah.
So Naismith, says, right, secure the ship to yellow alert. What's the status of the Akaru vessel? And fortunately for the Akaru, it seems as if the Vigilant took the worst of it. And you get a report in. You overhear a report from the engineering staff who are on the Akaru vessel to advise you that the damage again is superficial, because again, Vigilant was leading the way, and so your shields took the worst of it, and so they've had a few sort of power conduits ruptured, but nothing. It's all superficial damage.
Did the burst come from a specific direction, or did it come from all around?
I mean, you can a navigation. You can look. The sensors will tell you that it just emerged from nowhere, because that's how these things seem to be happening.
Localize the point where it emerged from.
I mean, it's 2 light years away. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's
okay.
So it isn't anything. There's no kind of significance to that, other than the fact that it just seemed to have come out of nowhere. Fortunately, the work that you did in preparing the ship to handle these things better seems to have worked, at least in this instance. Right. So as this is going on, Kalish.
Yes.
So Kalish, you suddenly are overcome very, very briefly. You kind of have a feeling of nausea. Nausea. However you pronounce it. Nauseous. Kalish, so you're on the bridge and you're kind of listening to these reports coming in and doing your thing. And you suddenly have to you sort of reach out and steady yourself on the back of a chair.
Okay.
And in your head, you see, or rather feel the presence, the image of a Tilikal It might not be the same. The Tillicol, what was her name? Anver. Oh God, I can't remember the name of that. But you remember the main woman that you
Yes.
dealt with before. But you get a clear impression of the Tillicol trying to come through, trying to break back into this universe, and it's very disconcerting because it seems so convincing to you. As I say, that it literally causes, it almost knocks you off your feet because your kind of consciousness kind of you're disorientated just for a moment.
Okay.
And Naismith kind of, are you well, Sergeant? Because he notices you kind of steady yourself on the back of the chair, but then after a moment, this feeling passes, and you feel normal, and you don't sense anything else going on. It just literally seemed to be a momentary sense of something.
Yeah. So, like, fingers to my temple, I sort of squinting a bit. Commander, the Teddy Carl, I sensed them.
Naismith looks over at Osterhagen. Osterhagen, you didn't pick anything up. Your kind of psychic senses, nothing.
I kind of subtly look at him and kind of shake my head side to side to say, he's talking out his ass.
Slacker.
Yeah, lightweight. They kind of go, like no, nothing from here. Must be the wine.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, and so Naismith as well. Okay, Sergeant. When once the ship is secured, can I suggest you maybe report to Dr. Plume and get him to take a look at you?
I feel fine. There's no worries here.
Very well, Sergeant. I'll leave that to your good judgment. But Khalees, you definitely felt something tangible.
Okay.
This was not a. I mean, apart from anything else, being who you are, you're not subject to flights of fancy or kind of imagination, and that kind of has thrown you again for that moment. It just threw you because it seemed so real, and you almost felt like you were kind of there with them. But again, if you take a moment to kind of assess your senses now and your how you're feeling, you feel fine, and it passed.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, is there anything anyone would like to do? I mean, again, that tachyon burst. So, Mike, as I mentioned, it came from. You can easily plot the point.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, sensor scans of that area don't really tell you anything. It just seemed to. Again, this seemed to be just another random anomaly that's appeared, and you just caught the tail end of it. And again, luckily, given the work that had already been put in, you've escaped with sort of superficial damage, and you're able to resume course without any delay.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, right. So, basically, given what's happened, obviously, Naismith arranges for the runabout to transfer the commander and her people back to their ship. He was obviously was originally going to use the transporter, but I think it's decided it might be sensible to avoid that. Just in case there's a recurrence of the disruption again, that you don't know what that might do to transport. So he suggests that he just sends the runabout over, and that proceeds without incident. The commander is returned to her ship without problem, and the runabout returns and docks. A few minutes later, and onward you travel. Okay, so the next day. So this is now day 4. After an eventful evening of, say, dinner and this incident with the disruption, the ship is traveling. You're proceeding, and you're, as I say, you're about a day away from Setu. Things are proceeding along when Osterhagen, can I get you to make a sense roll, please? So. And don't forget, you get to. I'll roll for the ship for you as well. So whatever you would normally do for sensors. So I guess it's probably insight and sensors.
Science. Tough roll 2.
Yeah. Oh, that's you there, right? Yeah. So that's 262. Oh, brilliant! Oh, good job. So I'm going to do the ship's also going to assist you because you're doing a shippy thing. So that is all good. I'm just going to bring that up.
Nice.
Cool. Okay, so that's a total of. So you've actually now got. I need to just to. You've now got 4 momentum. So you had 5, but then we transitioned the scene. Sorry, no. Hang on. Let me back up a minute. Sorry, you had 2 momentum that you generated from that previous task.
Yep.
So that would have dropped to 1 because we changed scenes. You've now rolled 3, so you've actually gained another point of momentum. So you've now got 2 points of momentum. This was a difficulty 2 task, and Kevin, you're just doing sensor sweeps, and you have detected a vessel approaching at extreme range. Given that the Vigilant has, I believe, has enhanced sensors, if I remember rightly, high resolution sensors. You pick up for want of a better word, a bogey on the sensors at extreme range.
It's an incoming, not within.
So
Okay,
say that again.
Captain incoming, not within hailing distance.
What can you see, Commander?
There's a
Lieutenant.
ship. There's a ship on sensors at long range.
Okay.
I'm trying to
Yellow
establish what it
alert.
is.
He sounds yellow alert because again, he's not taking any chances, and so as the klaxons go off, sure enough, on your sensors you are detecting a vessel approaching. It is approaching at high speed, and the configuration of it, at least at this distance, it doesn't seem to be something. It doesn't seem familiar. It certainly doesn't appear to be a. It's not a vessel from the Akaru for sure. And so, what action would you like to take?
Which
moment,
direction
it
is
is
it coming
ex-
from? Is it coming from their sort of homeworld direction, or is it coming from a different direction?
Seems to be coming from a different direction. It's just appeared,
Okay.
and basically, let's have a little look. Yeah. So as I say, this vessel is approaching. I'm going to just quickly put you up give me a second. I'm going to put you up a picture. So basically, you've gone to yellow alert, and obviously your Kalish's tactical sensors pick it up, and you're able to track it fairly easily as it comes in. What I'm going to do is if I
They're not in hailing range yet, are they?
they probably are in hailing range actually. So if you want to try and hail them, you certainly can. While you're doing that, I'm just going to find. There we go. Let's find this. So I made a little picture I made earlier. So this is going to go into the. It's in the game chat, STA game chat.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay, so that image is representative of the vessel that is approaching, and you attempt to hail it, and they're not answering your hails, and they again are approaching at high speed. And as you are scanning it, Kalish notes that they're actually charging weapons. You can again, your sensors are way better than the Akaru equivalent, and you can see that they've got gun ports are open and they're charging their weapons.
Okay, can I suggest that we position ourselves between them and the Akaru ship?
I take it the rest of you would be okay with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So as soon as
Sorry, go on.
as soon as you report then that the ship is approaching with weapons, it's obviously on it's obviously has some sort of hostile intention. Then Naismith orders the ship to red alert, and again, as you say, basically orders the Vigilant to interpose between this approaching vessel and the Starwood. So he contacts Commander Mouty and says, gets her to take an evasive course, and Vigilant will investigate. because the Starwood, though it does have minimal shields, it doesn't really have sort of defensive shielding. It has like navigational.
It's not going to stand a chance against this thing.
Well, again, it's not built for combat, really.
Yeah.
So as this ship approaches, they're still not answering your hails, and again, as they reach extreme range, they actually begin to fire on you. And luckily, because you're at red alert, the
Bing, bing,
these
bing,
energy
bing, bing,
energy beams. Say again.
ping, 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 ping.
Yeah, energy beams come in, and you can, they impact the ship. The Vigilant takes the hits, and the damage is minimal, and it's basically shield damage. It's not doing anything structural.
Okay, good.
And as they are firing on you, then this a message comes in from the ship, and it's an audio message, and the universal translator takes a moment to translate it. But essentially, what this message is saying is that they're ordering you to heave to and to hand over your cargo.
That's a pirate, is it?
You guess. Certainly, the ship design is not something that any of you are familiar with. I mean, obviously, again, it has your sensor readings taken. Given that this is all happening quite quickly, your tactical sensors, Kalish, can tell you that it's it's not really a match for the Vigilant, honestly. But they do have they certainly have better weaponry and shielding than the Akaru vessel. But the ship does seem to be it also seems to be in quite poor repair. So what I'd like to suggest here is, I'm rather than going into a Starship combat thing, what I'm going to do is take a leaf out of a Savage Worlds trick. Is that we're going to do what we call a dramatic task. So what this means is that I'm going to get each of you to tell me what it is that you want to do in this conflict, to how you want this scene to play out, and then what we'll do is we'll get each of you to make a roll, and assuming that each of you succeeds at your task, then you can determine how the scene plays out, if that makes sense. So
Okay.
Kevin and Karen, I think we did this in the Achtung Cthulhu game. I don't know if you remember that.
Yep.
So this kind of thing, Mike, you might not have come across this before, but rather than playing it out, blow by blow, what we say is, right, each of you will tell me what you want to contribute to this scene, and obviously the aim from you is to either drive off or destroy the pirate vessel. You each then make a roll based upon what you're trying to do, and assuming that everybody succeeds, then you get to tell me what happens, and if any of you don't succeed, then that might modify the result. But does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, right, Kaz, why don't we start with you in that case then, as this is sort of new, but I mean...
So what do we want to do?
I tell you, why don't you guys you guys feel free to have a little chat about it between you, of course. You don't have to decide on your own.
I was going to say, work out what we want to do.
Yeah, go for it. You do that.
Yeah.
So I think we should immobilize their ship, like target their engines and then target their weapons, just to have them.
Exactly. As I say,
because you want to have a chat with them rather than just destroy them. Because you want to know.
Well, exactly. Yeah, we'll show them that we've got superior firepower or whatnot, and we'll leave them adrift and then see if they need our help.
Yeah, well, they will do if we shoot their engines out.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna. So if Osterhagen targets, scan them and find out where their engines are, or at least where the power supply is, or where the reactors are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking for weak points.
And
that makes perfect sense. So I would suggest exactly that. Then so the first thing we'll do is we'll get Osterhagen to carry out, to basically scan them and to go, right, here's where their weapons are, here's where their engines are. Okay. That's a good place to start. So then, Kaz, what are you going to bring to the table?
Once I've got the information from Osterhagen,
yeah,
I'm going to maneuver the ship into an advantageous position and ready to so we can open up on them, and then I guess Kalish is going to open up on them.
Yep.
Quite straightforward. Again, the idea of this kind of encounter mechanic is just to, rather than slow things down to a lengthy sort of turn by turn shooting match, we determine what we want the outcome to be, because this is not a kind of a massive important milestone encounter. This is something to deal with along the way. So okay, cool. So why don't we do that first then? So what first thing to happen is then if Osterhagen, you're going to make a roll, and you've only got here a difficulty of 1 because the vigilant sensors are the best that the Federation has to offer at the moment. You've got high resolution test sensors, and also your technology is superior to this vessel, so you should have no trouble at all in scanning it. Right, so you got a total of 2 successes, I believe.
Yeah, nice.
Perfect. So we get 1 point of momentum, and obviously the ship you've already got, I think, 2 points of momentum. We decided the ship will assist you with again sensors and science, because again you're making a roll. Right, there you go. So you're doing very well so far. So right, so next thing then, right, so basically Osterhagen filters this information through to the helm. And Kaz gives you the information you need. So you're going to make a con roll. Now your difficulty here is going to be 2, just because you've got to. It's slightly more difficult, but don't forget you have got momentum to spend. You've got, I think, 4 points of momentum.
Okay,
so I would probably suggest to spend some of that on extra dice if I were you.
okay, so that's 2. So we use focuses on this or not?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got helm.
Helm
You've got helm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
probably wouldn't think, but his helm would be more.
you've got con operations or helm operations or something, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yep. So focuses will also apply.
Focused used. Yes.
So yeah, totally.
Thing. So we'll try. How many? What's it we got?
So by my reckoning, you've got 4 points of momentum available.
Oh.
So obviously, you can spend a point of momentum to buy an extra dice, basically, and then if you want to buy 2 dice, it'll cost you 2 points of momentum, and
What do you guys think?
It goes up incrementally.
Go.
Well, yeah, we want to succeed. I'd spend some of that momentum.
I'll go for 3 dice to start with. Yeah.
Yeah, do that. So sorry, how many are you going for? 3 dice, yeah.
And I'm using.
So okay, so your momentum goes down to 3, and you roll 3 d20, and obviously the ship will assist you with weapons as well. With con, because you're using the ship system. So
that's 2.
There you go.
2 hits.
2 successes, right? So the ship is going to roll with it's going to be blah 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 blah. It's going to be engines and con, and again 1 dice. Doesn't help you, but that's fine. You still succeed. Yeah. Okay. So then finally, if Kalish would like to make an attack roll, so when you're making what weapon system do you wish to use? Phasers or photon torpedoes?
I think phasers.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. Okay, so the standard task, if you're going to make an attack, is so let's have a look. If I remember rightly, right. So it's control and security, assisted by weapons and the ship's weapons and security. Your difficulty number is 2.
Okay.
Because you're using energy weapons. If you're using torpedoes, I think it's 3. But yeah, it's so weapons and security. Yeah. So if you want to make your roll first, again, you've got 3 points of momentum available.
Yeah, I think I'll buy another dice if that's all right.
Absolutely fine. So that takes down to 2 points of momentum. So if you want to make that roll 3 d20, and obviously you've got perfect. Boom. Right. So you've got that's absolutely fine. So that's 3 successes. The ship's going to roll as well to assist you. Oh, bloody hell!
Oh, lovely.
Fine. So, long story short, you've all succeeded at your task. So, how this will play out then is this ship comes in, fires a strafing run at the Vigilant because you've put yourself in the way whilst the Akaru ship breaks off. And Vigilant interposes herself. The weapons come in, basically bouncing off your shields. You then, Osterhagen scans the vessel, detects its weak points. Kaz carries out a fancy helm maneuver where the Vigilant kind of flips up and over and behind this ship before it has a chance to react. And then Kalish unleashes a strafe of precision phaser hits, which essentially knock out the ship's engines and also disable its weapons ports. And within 30 seconds of this attack happening, you kind of flip back over, and the Vigilant has this ship under its guns as this ship kind of coasts to an undignified halt, or coasts to drifting. Vigilant kind of flips back over, and is quite clearly has got this other ship under her guns. And unsurprisingly, the commander of this other vessel comes onto the comm, and you can, even though it's coming through the translator, you can all clearly hear the sort of panic in his voice as he surrenders unconditionally.
Steve,
and yeah,
can we get a read on the other ship just in case this was a diversion?
Absolutely, good, and that's a good point. Yes, you can. So you can easily track. Yeah, and yes, you're. It's a good idea to be concerned. However, the Starwood is quite safe. It's come to it banks back in. You give them the all clear, because this other ship is in no condition now to offer any kind of threat.
Perfect.
And you pause briefly whilst you deal with the situation. So Naismith has the captain of the other vessel sort of brought over under guard, because he basically offers himself up to, as sort of penance for this attack. This ship, as you rightly described it, is essentially it's a privateer. These are not a Karu. These are another. These are representatives from a couple of other species that you haven't seen before.
Okay.
But what you are able to determine from their, Kalish is able to easily access their tactical logs, because again their systems are all 200 years behind yours.
Yep.
And what you actually determine is quite useful. You actually figure out that there was an undetected particle leak from the Starward's engines, which this pirate ship had actually picked up.
So it's tracking them.
It's basically dyrodium particles have been leaking from the engine, and because you're not because this the Akaru technology is not something you're 100% familiar with. This was overlooked, and so this kind of was like a breadcrumb to this privateer.
Yep.
So as a result, you're able to you feed that back to Giara, and she gets her people to kind of plug the leak essentially. And within about 12 hours, because you obviously have to, so you kind of the captain, after the initial this guy sort of throwing himself on his sword, if you like, because obviously Naismith doesn't really want to deal with this. So what he does is he gets the engineering department to patch up their engines sufficiently to allow them to limp home.
Yep.
And once getting assurances from the captain of the ship that they will not pursue, or then basically Naismith says, right, if you try that again, mate, you've had it. You've
been a very naughty boy.
You've seen what we can do, and if you trouble these people again, then it won't go so well for you next time. And sure enough, within a few hours, this ship kind of limps away, never to be seen again. And obviously, you've made tactical scans of this vessel and the capabilities of it. I'm sure Osterhagen will have made some scans of the crew for future reference. And within 12 hours, again, it's an unwanted delay, but within 12 hours, you're back on course. Is
there any way we could have left a breadcrumb trail with them? Is there anything that we could do to their ship that they might not realise?
100%. Yeah, I mean, like I say, your technology is way above these guys. So yeah, you could easily put some sort of beacon or something in there, and they would not know about it.
Yeah, I'd like to do that if that's okay.
100%. Yeah. So basically, what Kalish can do is fit a kind of a friend or foe transmitter or something, and you could easily kind of patch it into their systems. And the only way they would find this is if they did like a full strip down of their systems.
Yeah.
And certainly, it's not going to be found quickly. So yes, you can do that, and you can obviously then keep a record of that frequency. So if they come anywhere near, you'll know about it, which I guess is what you're aiming for.
I wonder then, if we were patching up their engines, could we also patch in a cut-off switch? So if they did come up upon us again, we could just go
100%, yeah.
cut their engines.
100%. Yeah, you. To be honest, that they are so. These are not very good pirates, right? they're they've really totally misread this situation, and yeah, I mean, the first thing that you, as I say, the captain kind of pretty much offers to throw himself on his sword, and they're very contrite and very very aware of your technological superiority, and you kind of have free run of their systems. Obviously, with you'd presumably Kalish, if Kalish is going to do the work herself, she'd probably take take a couple of her people with her.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can do what you like, and that makes 100%. And Giara can easily rig that, no problem.
Yeah. Well,
because again, you have kind of subspace transmitters which they wouldn't even be able to detect.
Yep.
So you could easily cut their engines off from half a light year away, if need be, without any problem.
Well, Kalish had a nickname on her old ship, which was Commander Overkill. So she, they're not much of a threat, but she still likes to take all precautions.
Absolutely fine. Yeah, that's 100% easily done. And again, that takes, Kalish's people, rather Giara's people can easily fix that for you. And then she'll provide you with the subspace frequency of this device. So yeah, if they come anywhere near, you can just push a button, and they're not going anywhere. So she might stop short at having the warp core breach, but it'll certainly cut their power, no problem. Cool, right, lovely. So you get that all organised, and yeah, absolutely fine. That all happens, and so within, let's say, 12-hour delay, which is unfortunate because you obviously are on a mission, but by the time you've dealt with tidying these fools up and sending them on their way, and making sure everything is good, then you undertake your journey again. So the rest of the journey passes without any incident. I'm assuming there's nothing that you guys want to throw in there, but I'm presuming you're probably keen just to get on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, so right. So after the unwanted, as I say, after the unwanted delay, you continue your mission, and right. So your vessel breaks out of warp alongside the Starwood. Together, the two vessels cruise towards Setu, which is a lush Class M planet with expansive oceans and two large continents. Sensor scans indicate that Setu is a robust industrial world. You can detect one large shipyard and spaceport, which is located on the southern continent. Commander Mouty informs you that your team may transport to the planet's surface and provides coordinates to the exterior plaza of the palace grounds. Right, so obviously they've assumed that we've told them about transport, but we kind of established that, so that's
Brilliant.
fine.
Yep.
So Commander Mouty informs you of coordinates to the exterior plaza of the palace grounds of Setu's ruler, who is Iryax Nadeon. I hate that name. And she, yeah, exactly.
Wax the day.
Yeah. So she respectfully asks that you give them an hour, because they will need to. They have to the Starwood has to land on the planet's starport, and then they need to transit to the palace. So they ask if you wouldn't mind waiting an hour just to give them time to make landfall and then to get over to the coordinates.
Yep.
Which I assume is not a problem for you to accept. So if you, so Kevin, do you want to let's get you to scan the planet just while the ship settles into orbit, and presumably you want to scan the planet to see what you can determine. That seem reasonable?
Ooh.
So if you can do a reason plus science task with a difficulty of 0.
Reason.
So yeah. Oh, you've just done it. Oh no, there you go.
That was,
bloody hell.
That's free.
That
Bloody
was
hell, okay.
insight and science. So
That's
I did
a bit better.
well.
No,
Yeah. Let's go that one.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's 3. Okay, 3 successes. So that means you've now got 5 points of momentum. And
because it's a change of scene, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. So you lose one of those, but then the ship's got to roll anyway. So hang on a minute. Sensors and science for the ship. And come on, Vigilant. Hey, all right. So there you go. You're back up to 5 points of momentum. Okay, so you can, if you like, guys, you can spend some momentum to get some more information. But I'll tell you the basics. Okay, so let's have a look. Page. I'm going to read you some basic information about the planet based upon your initial scan. So this is the scan from orbit. So the planet is called Say2. So it's the second planet in the system. Systems designation on your star charts is FGC 697451, but it's called Say2. Population. So your estimate of population is approximately 1.3 billion. Excuse me. It's a Class M planet. As we said, it's approximately 60% ocean. There are 2 large continents. As mentioned, there are 2. The planet has 2 moons. The larger of the 2 is uninhabited, but you can tell from your scans that it is rich in heavy ores, and it will presumably be mined at some point in the future. The smaller moon is lighter in resources, but again has some natural resource value. And so that's pretty much all you can get from orbit. As I said, you can determine the situation with the where the starport is located, and sure enough, your sensors will track the vessel as it the Starward as it lands on the planet's surface. And you can also so Kevin, do you want to, or could you guys want to spend any momentum to get a bit more information?
I think so. We got loads of momentum. I think we should.
Yeah, you got 5 points of momentum. So
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Seems.
well, if you
power.
I'll get you to spend 2 points of momentum, so that'll leave you with 3. So you, in addition to that information, you've just determined sort of general information about the system. Your sensors can tell you that there are 6 space-worthy frigates of similar configuration to the Starward currently on the starport's landing pads. You can see that there are facilities which can support up to another 20 vessels, and there seem to be more vessels in construction. You detected the shipyard facility, and you can see that there are several of similar space frames under construction. And it's clear to you that there is obviously a planetary. They obviously have resources to build more. They seem clearly sort of dedicated to getting out into space. Like I say, the Starwood is the first vessel that's left the system, but they've clearly got, as I say, they've got more built, and they are working on more.
Steve, can we check up on that? Can we check for like warp patterns or whatever it is that will be left behind? Can we see if there's any trace of?
Certainly can. I'll come back to that in a sec.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, certainly. So, right, the northern continent, according to your initial scans, is more heavily populated, and its cities seem more densely packed. Although they're certainly not overpopulated, and they seem to be very efficiently planned out. Again, as we mentioned earlier, it seems that they have a very sort of advanced design aesthetic, if you like. So that's reflected in their cities, which seem to be laid out very efficiently. You also pick up a trace buildup of EM radiation and tetryon particles in the upper atmosphere, although these all seem to be within normal, naturally occurring levels. So that doesn't really tell you anything other than that might simply be residue from the the kind of tetryon disturbance that you encountered earlier. So because you know that those things happen, throughout this region, and much like the ozone layer, the planet's own, magnetic fields kind of give some protection from that. So nothing necessarily to cause concern.
Yep.
And okay, right, perfect. Okay, one interesting thing that you do determine. So Karen, you said you were scanning for warp signatures and so on, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Any residual traces of because if this was the first ship that's gone out,
Yeah.
this area should be pretty clean of it, right?
Correct. Okay. So you carry out again. Kevin's carried out his scan and he's done a very thorough job of it. What you do detect is so there seems to be no evidence that any of the other Akaru frigates have actually left the planet yet. So the only warp trail and sort of ion trail that you're able to easily detect comes from the Star Ward, which is the vessel that you're aware of.
Yeah.
However, you do on further examination, Osterhagen is able to determine that it appears that on at least one occasion, and possibly more, it looks as if a Ferengi vessel has certainly been in orbit, if not made planetfall.
Right. Okay.
Ferengi engines have like a distinctive signature. I mean, most races have, the technology has a distinctive energy signature. And so he's kind of he's able to quite clearly determine that a Ferengi vessel or possibly more, although the readings are quite they're not recent, put it that way.
Yeah.
But it does seem to you as if the report that you've had from the Akaru that they've not met any other spacefaring peoples might not be accurate, although you have no way of knowing whether
the ship made
obviously
contact.
the people. Yeah, so the Ferengi ship may have made contact with somebody. It may not, and it may be that it's not general knowledge. So, in other words, they might not have lied to you. They might not have known about it.
Yeah.
But you can clearly see that a Ferengi Decora class Marauder, like I don't know if you remember the ones from Next Gen, the kind of orange crab-like things, which is the sort of standard Ferengi cruiser. There's definitely has been in orbit. But you can't really tell. There's no way of knowing whether they've been to the surface. But that's just that's just a bit of information that Osterhagen's been able to sort of ferret out from digging through the data.
Very cool.
Okay, so what this has all gone on, and this has all taken you an hour or so to process. And right, so. Cool. Okay, so you've pretty much got all the information you can get from orbit, and by this time, it's now the time that you've been expected to arrive on the planet's surface. So, I mean, obviously, Naismith is going to, take you lot.
Well, there's a surprise.
So, do any of you wish to remain on the? Is there a reason any of you wish to remain on the ship, or are you all happy to go with the landing party?
What, for a bit of
I'm happy
sightseeing?
to go.
Coolio. Okay, and we're going to assume that Giara is also coming along, and presumably Kalish, I'm sure, will be
Can we
armed
bring some targets?
because she always is armed.
Sorry, can we bring some targets?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I meant security.
Well, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, again, Naismith kind of answers to your decision. So, do you wish to bring?
think
is that a hostile display if you're going into a first contact, or?
I think it would be stupid not to take some.
Well, you've got Kalish with you though,
That's true.
and Kalish is going to be. I mean, Kalish is armed to the teeth at the best of times, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, they can beam down if we need them, right?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think we'll be okay.
I mean, as first officer, Kaz, you are offering. There's nothing wrong with offering. Your counterpoint opinion, because Naismith is of the opinion I don't want to go in. I don't want to go in heavy-handed. We've seen nothing to suggest that this is a dangerous situation. Obviously, Sergeant Kalish is more than capable of
no, that's fair.
providing
That's
us
fair
with
enough.
security if needed. But again, nothing wrong with offering the suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I would be remiss as first officer if I didn't offer.
Quite right. Sorry, that just to jump out quickly, because I went to see Star Trek: The Motion Picture on Saturday at the cinema, which was fucking badass, by the way. It was really good. But that just reminds me, because that's the thing that Decker says, isn't it?
Yeah.
As your first officer, it's my job to offer alternate courses of action, and Kirk goes, "You're right."
I was actually thinking of Riker, but there you go.
No, it just made me think
No,
of
that's
Decker
fair enough.
when he
But
says,
as I say, it was just.
Yeah. Anyway, right, cool. So, fine. So, given you make preparations, Naismith doesn't get you to wear dress uniform this time, because you're probably wearing those stupid monkey suits by now. So you're all just wearing normal duty uniforms. Kalish can choose to wear her. I know she sort of wears a bit of a hybrid uniform, right? So I'll leave it to you to decide how she's attired. And you report to the transporter room, and given the coordinates, you materialize on the planet's surface. So the first thing you notice is obviously that the planet is, you can breathe the atmosphere, which of course you would have checked before beaming down.
If they were breathing our atmosphere, we can breathe theirs.
Quite right. And it's a pleasant. It is a a very pleasant. Climate seems very very pleasant. Commander Mouty and her senior officers are waiting for you in a wide, tiled plaza, which is ringed in tall pillars. Each pillar is covered in finely detailed glyphs and iconography. It's clear that you are in a section of a much larger complex of buildings and pillared halls and courtyards. On the warm breeze, you catch a whiff of pungent incense, and you even recognize some spice from the meal that you prepared on the ship. Some of the spices that were used in the preparation of that meal, you kind of, you pick some of that out from the odors that are coming on the breeze. You can also hear what sounds like faint chimes, which could be bells or small cymbals. And the impression that you're getting is that this is some sort of almost like a religious facility. Commander Mouty smiles and offers both hands in greeting. Welcome to Setu, my friends. Akarubak Chiel has prepared a welcoming space for you. She turns and leads you into the large open entrance to the palace, and you're led down a large, wide corridor that provides a welcome respite from the heat outside. She leads you into a square courtyard that has a small pool of water in the centre. There are some blue flowers floating in the slowly circulating water, and there are many thick cushions which have been embroidered exquisitely, scattered around the courtyard. And she invites you to a cluster of cushions and takes a seat along with her senior officers. Various small serving robots appear, floating on anti-gravity units, and you've possibly seen some similar sort of drones on their ship. And these drones kind of fly in, and they're literally bringing in plates with some various kind of snack bites and drinks of various hues in clear glasses. I'm assuming that you probably will just discreetly scan the drinks to make sure they're okay. And you recognise some of the food items from, again, stuff that you've seen on the ship. And Mouty stands and raises her glass to the group, and she thanks you for your help in repairing the Starwood. And she says, and again, we thank you for your assistance with the threat from the other vessel as well. It seems that you are our guardian angels, and we are delighted to welcome you to Setu. So whilst you're eating, Giara is paying particularly close attention to the serving droids. In fact, you notice that she's discreetly tapping on her tricorder, and she kind of comes over to the rest of you and says, she goes, these robots are of a highly efficient design. The anti-gravity technology and the power generator is extremely efficient. Again, it does have similar traces of the Tilikal design philosophy that we detected before. It seems that it definitely seems that these people have a good grasp of technology.
Does it seem at odds with what other stuff we've seen? The technology seem out of place?
No, the technology seems to match what you've seen on the ship. Again, and it also reflects this kind of design aesthetic that they have. But again, it's this power routing thing that you've detected before, which seems to be repeated, and that probably allows for the robots to be perhaps to seem more advanced, because the the way they use power is just more efficient, basically. If that makes sense. So as you're listening to her, there is you're approached by a tall woman dressed in flowing cobalt blue robes, which are lavishly embroidered with silver. And she sweeps into the courtyard, followed by a couple of aides who are carrying what you recognise as data pads. Basically, they're equivalent to pads. Commander Mouty stands and bows to this robed woman, and she nods at the commander, and she puts her arms out in a welcoming gesture. She says, "Welcome to Setu and the Ewin Kar, which is the centre of our government and the residence of our ruler, Eax Nadeon, Earwax Nadeon, the Ageless. I am Akaru Bak Chiel, governor of the province and your host. May I ask your names, please? And obviously, you will introduce yourselves."
Yeah.
I presume you're joking, Mike, right?
Again? What?
Sorry? No, sorry. I thought you said you don't tell her your names.
No. I never said that. No, I was actually thinking I was going to go.
I am Brian, and this is Brian.
This is Brian.
This is Brian.
And I want you to release Waterwick.
And you hear Khalees stand at the back and goes, "No, I'm Spartacus."
Spartacus. So this Chiel, she basically finds a cushion and takes a seat amongst you. And her aides also sit nearby, but at a discreet distance. And they are, again, they sort of engage you or she engages you in conversation, and again is, quite curious about your species. And to be honest, you cover a lot of the same ground that you've already covered with Commander Mouty. Again, she asks questions about, you are clearly of a different species, she says to Khalees. Tell me about your home world, and she's genuinely interested. Again, that same openness and curiosity comes across from what you've determined before. So as this goes on for some time, probably for you have like an hour of kind of small talk and nibbles and this and after a while, Naismith kind of almost clears his throat, and he speaks to Chiel, and he says, "Thank you so much. I'd just like to, on behalf of my officers, I'd like to thank you very much for your hospitality, Governor." And he uses a sort of title. I would ask if it would be possible for us to meet with the Earwax. Is that have I pronounced it correctly? She says, "No, it's Earwax." No, okay. She says, "As the head of state, it is only proper that our discussions and overture and discussions about our shared interests and how we could possibly work together in the future. It's only appropriate that we should discuss this with him." So Chiel says, "Well, I'm afraid that the Earwax is unavailable for the rest of the day. However, he will be very happy to meet you tomorrow morning. We'd like to offer you accommodation in the palace if you'd like to stay. Alternatively, if you would like to return to your ship and return in the morning, of course that is perfectly acceptable. We would be delighted to offer you our hospitality, but we certainly will not be offended if you would rather rest in your own ship and then return tomorrow morning. So what would you like to do?"
The cynic in me says, "Let's go back to our own ship."
There he is.
I say we stay.
Who's in command at the minute on the Vigilant? Who's in?
It's probably Jenkins, isn't it? He's already buggered off. I guess it would be. It's a good question actually, because you're all down on the ship, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. It's probably. I'm going to say it's probably. I'm going to say McHugh. So
you know who is a senior officer who's probably still up there?
Oh, Plume.
Plume.
Yeah, Plume. Okay,
He's
there you
very
go.
senior officer.
He'd probably, he probably wouldn't want to take it, but yeah, technically he is the senior officer. So okay, so technically he's in command and he's delegated it to McHugh.
Yeah.
So as soon as they're off the ship, he goes, McHugh, report to the bridge. You're in charge. Either way, yeah, it's up to you. I mean, it's perfectly, it literally is up to you what you want to do. If you want to stay, they're more than happy for you to stay, but they also genuinely are not, they're not offended if you decide you want to stay on the ship. So
Yeah, well, it's
you
up to
guys can
command, so
decide
I
between
defer to Kaz.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's up to the captain's decision. But my recommendation is we stay. Got more because if we go back to the ship, we're not here. We can't learn stuff. We can't sneak out in the middle of the night and find the.
like Indiana Jones and the Temple
You've
of
got
Doom,
it right. You've got it exactly.
You find that portrait at the back of the room, and you
Pushed it a bit, and the secret door opens up, and away we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
okay, fine. So you, so you, Naismith. Well, we would be delighted to avail ourselves of your hospitality, Governor. He goes with Governor again because I can't be bothered to say that long name of hers. So there's a bit of formality, and she says, "Very well, please follow me. We'll take you to your quarters." And within half an hour or so, you've all been given, frankly, ridiculously luxurious suites to stay in. These are like huge. The beds are huge, and you've got your own bedrooms and bathrooms, and you've got like verandas looking out onto the overlooking the rest of this. What looks like looks like a very large sort of temple complex, but it's very pretty. And you're very, very comfortable. And anything you need in terms of food and drink, they'd be happy to bring you.
Dave, so I'm gonna hop up onto my bed, turn around 3 times, and then lie down.
Why are you going to do that?
Cat.
Oh, because you're a cat. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So before we wrap up for the evening, does anybody want to do any investigation? So basically, the formalities kind of die off. So it's now getting into the late evening, and the Akaru delegation have all kind of retired. Commander Mousy and her people have excused themselves and have presumably returned home. And the characters, you're all kind of left in your own. You've got like not connecting, but you've got adjoining suites. And there doesn't seem to be any guard. So if I'm presuming Kalish at least will probably check.
Yep.
And there's no obvious, they haven't put sentries on the door or anything.
I'm
There are. So does anybody want to do anything before we
Grab some DNA and run it against any of the.
I mean, you can you can easily do that. Although
it took 2 hours, but we finally got there.
It's just to see if there's any connection between their DNA and the Tilical.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
To be honest, the rooms are actually really clean, but you can certainly gather some DNA samples without too much effort.
Right.
But again, as you're scanning with your tricorder, it is actually very these are really nice rooms, and you certainly will be very comfortable.
Update TripAdvisor.
Yeah, exactly.
A hunch. I'm going to honest.
Yeah.
Set my tricorder to the widest possible scan distance. And see if scan for any Ferengi power sources or emissions.
Okay, no, that's absolutely fair.
You
don't need to roll for that.
You
don't need to roll for that
because a ship in orbit at some point.
Tricorder basic function, so you don't need to roll for that. No, there's no sign of any. There's no sign of any Ferengi equipment or power sources or anything that you can
That's
detect.
fair enough.
Obviously, since it's come up as well, I'm going to assume that you've left orders for the Vigilant to scan, to keep an eye out whether obviously you'd be keeping an eye out anyway for any other vessels, but as I say, they've got orders to report if anything shows up. But so does anybody else have anything they want to do before turning in for the night?
Can't think of anything.
No, neither can I.
Cool. Okay. So fine. So I think you all turn in for the night, and just to allay any fears, you sleep through the night very comfortably. Actually, these are probably like the best beds you've ever slept in because the beds are huge. The climate is very pleasant. So and you all actually get a very good night's sleep. And you are woken kind of gently, if you like, literally respectful, little tap on the door from you presume they must be some sort of religious acolyte or something, but they come in they bring you sort of a beverage and, again, more food. But obviously they don't come in unless you're, they wait for you to invite them in, kind of thing.
Woken to the smell of their version of bacon.
Exactly. And I think that's where we will leave it for tonight, because that's a good as any place to pause it for now. So just wanted to say thank you very much for turning up. And I know that was a bit of an odd session, but I was delighted with that discussion in the middle. That was fascinating.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was good.
So really good stuff. So thanks again. It's really good to be back on track. I am as I say, I am planning to now just carry on.
It's episode 50.
Yeah, well, it's hard to believe, isn't it? I say in some ways I kind of wish we'd if there'd been a good point in the plot to sort of do something special, but I think I'm just more than happy with it that we just got to come back together tonight and to move things forward.
Yeah.
My plan will be for the last session that we do of the game. As I said, I've talked about that briefly last time, that I have an end point in mind, which is still a distance away. But I think that one we would definitely meet and do in person.
Good.
If we haven't met in person, if we haven't been doing it in person before, but I'm quite happy doing this game this way because it hopefully it all suits your schedules as well. So, but anyway, thanks again. That was episode 50. Thank you very much for listening to Starship Vigilant, and we will catch you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Starship Vigilant. Kaz was played by Mike. David Osterhagen was played by Kevin. Kolish was played by Kerin. Our music is Fanfare for Space by Kevin MacLeod, which is licensed under a Creative Commons license. See you next time.